Welcome to Communicast, a communication skills podcast. I'm Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. On today's episode, I'm talking with Marvin Espy, an award-winning portrait and cityscape artist. Marvin discusses the importance of not making assumptions and striving for connectedness when it comes to being a great communicator. He also shares how to leverage your transferable skills when making a career change. I hope you enjoy. Marvin, thank you so much for joining me today from your studio in, I am sure, balmy New London, Connecticut. To get things started today, maybe you just tell us a little bit about your background and really the career journey that brought you to where you are today.
Great, thanks, Scott, and it's good to be here. My journey started when my high school art instructor was pushing to get me into a four-year degree at Miami University of Ohio, where he sent all of his most talented art students. I was petrified of a four-year institution, especially a small pseudo Ivy League like Miami of Ohio. And so I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh and got a degree in design and visual communications. And I was so well prepared from high school that I really excelled in a lot in design and figure drawing. And I felt like I had a lot of different directions I could go. But upon completing that degree in 1985, I freelanced for a couple years looking for that perfect job, but freelancing was paying well. I was doing work for Sears and Roebuck at the time, remember that? And then JCPenney, and I was doing fashion illustration for their Sunday circular in the Cincinnati Enquirer and the Cincinnati Post. And I thought, I'm on my way. But then a little thing called computer graphics and Macintosh came around, and all that work that was previously handmade, so to speak, went digital. And that digitization of it all really set me back because I wasn't prepared to go back to school again. And I kind of had my mind that I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on. And all of a sudden there was no wind in my sails. So I met a little girl that I liked that was cute and smart and ambitious. And I thought, she's not going to want anything to do with me if I don't have a job. And so this freelance thing wasn't looking real to her. And so I got a job in sales. And I think one of the first was a phone sales. I was dialing numbers and trying to get people to buy photo packages for, I think it was Olin Mills at the time.
Wow.
I was that guy that, I learned the coffee close. We'll talk about that one day. But so I that led to about a 27-year detour that took me through technology sales, communication technology sales. I sold Cisco products and then T1 integration. And then I eventually landed in higher education, selling online education for adult learners. And along the way, I kept a sketchbook and I did little projects here and there, but art was way off to the side. Toward the end of that 27-year period, the last somewhere in the middle there, I did marketing consulting. With the idea was that I would blend the careers I've had of marketing, of sales and marketing on one end, but being on the design end of it also. So I did that until 2008 when everything went to pot, and it wasn't the best time to be on my own, and that's when I went into the education arena. And but then in 2013, fate would have it, I had the opportunity to pursue this passion of art. And my wife introduced me to a gallery owner who gave me an opportunity to have a one-man show. And as a matter of fact, my wife showed her this sketchbook. And this is a sketchbook that I kept. Most of these drawings were done on office copier paper with ballpoint.
Wow.
And that's my Robert De Niro and my Robin Williams. And I was doing these sketches like on conference calls when you got your headphone on and you're in your cubicle or you're at your desk. I doodle and it looks like you're taking notes. And so, and it was really the way I concentrate. But based on those sketches, the gallerist said, listen, if you can give me some art that I can hang, um, paintings or something like that, I'll give you a show. I mean, you clearly got talent. So in about 2.5 months, I did 15 paintings, large paintings, and she gave me a one-man show. One of those paintings, a couple months later, I entered in a citywide contest in Charlotte, North Carolina. There were 60 artists who each presented 3 pieces of work for a judge. And out of 180 pieces, mine took best of show. And it was the first contest I'd entered since 8th grade. And taking best of show gave me the affirmation that I got to find a way to separate from this corporate world and do what I'm best at.
Outstanding. That is quite a career journey. And I will say a 27-year detour is pretty big detour. And it sounds like the type of detour I take when I'm driving and on the family road trip and refusing to stop and ask for directions and won't listen to Google Maps. But no,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing the journey that you went on and just how you kind of continue to refine those skills, develop the skills that you had, and then acquired new skills that you could later on use in this kind of next phase of your career. And you and I have known each other for quite some time, and we've talked a lot about, you making that transition from corporate America to now the full-time art career, how you're able to really leverage a lot of the communication skills and the transferable skills that you picked up on your corporate jobs and those sales jobs to really help for success today. And I believe even helped you in that first competition that you entered. And with this idea of communication skills, when you hear that, when you hear somebody, whether it's in the business world or in the art world, somebody is a strong communicator, they're an effective communicator. What does that mean to you? What's that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you had asked me that, Scott, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it'd be an easy answer. It'd be, communication skills, someone who can orate or can speak well, can have a conversation, that he's a good listener, can listen and respond, and also someone who is a writer, right? Who can write a good email, or who can write a good letter. And those typically on a resume, that's what you look for. But I think today, when you say communication skills, it's so much broader than that now. Just given the times that we live in, I think if I try to put a word to it, when you say communication skills, the thing that comes to my mind is no assumptions. You can't make assumptions about anything anymore. And I tell you why I think that. Early in my sales career, I got sent to trainings all the time. And one that I got sent to often was Tom Hopkins. And Tom Hopkins wrote a book called How to Master the Art of Sales. And that book and that way of selling, it was right for that generation, but it quickly faded away, because in those days, the person who had the sales wares, the goods, had all the information. Mm-hmm. They had the product knowledge about their product. They had product knowledge about their competition, and they educated the consumer on, look, here's what our competitors do, here's what we do, and all the information came from that sales agent. And so Tom Hopkins and those kind of, I don't know if I can say his name, but all those kinds of sales programs in those days was about the salesperson leading the person down the path that they wanted them to follow. But today, and we've been talking about the age of information for the last 20 years or more, right? And so we're way into the age of the information age. And I think it's brought about things that we would not have even imagined. We thought, well, just having now people are going to have access to information. Well, that changed the sales game because I can't come to you, Scott, and with the assumption that I have all the product knowledge and I can tell you all, I can list for you, here are the benefits that you're going to experience. And here's the cons, because you may have privy to information that I don't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the information is true or not, I don't know. There's so much information that I may not even have enough information to work around any misinformation that you may have, because you may have so much of it. So I think that today, having no assumptions, assuming that the person that I'm trying to communicate with has a whole battery of opportunity for information that I don't know what media outlets they look at. I don't know what social media. I don't know what podcasts they listen to. There's information everywhere at our fingertips all the time. And so I can't make assumptions about what I think they know or how best to communicate with them.
That is so important. And as you mentioned, the balance of information really has shifted with the advent of the internet, and just so much information out there, so widely accessible to anyone that's looking for something. So if we go into a sales meeting, it's fair to think that they probably already know everything about what we do. They're pretty far along in that buying journey. They have the information. They may just have some questions they want answered, or to really see it in action. So kind of going in and really focusing on not necessarily about me and what I want to tell you, but listening, asking questions, focusing on what's most important to that person so that I can share. Because if I go into a meeting with an assumption that, I need to tell them all about my business, all about my products, all about our services, I could waste 15 or 20 minutes and really put that person off, because they're like, I know all that. I saw that on your website. Yep. One of my colleagues referred me to you. They told me all about it. I went through one of your programs or experienced your product 10 years ago. Here's what I want to talk about today. So I think that's great. This idea of going in with no assumptions, just because really the world has changed and the access to information is just so widely available. Absolutely.
You're funny, and connected to that, Scott. I'm often, my wife and I are invited out to functions and groups and organizations, and a lot of times it's an opportunity to be a part of this group, or my wife has the opportunity to speak or something like that. But when I arrive, more often than not now, I'm finding out that the people there know all about me, that the person who invited me may have collected data from my website or from articles or whatever, and have forwarded it to the people. Hey, let's welcome Marvin Espy to this such and such event. Take a look at his bio. Look forward to meeting him. And so I get to an event, and I didn't realize this at first, but by the time I arrive, people already know my story. Mm-hmm. So the 27-year history thing that I'm always sharing, people already know it when I walk in the room. So it's definitely you can waste a lot of time talking before you listen.
Absolutely. And on a similar experience, as I thought about the difference between my 10-year high school reunion to my 20-year high school reunion, one of the big developments in that time frame really was social media and Facebook. At the 10-year reunion, it was a lot of time spent catching up. Oh, what are you doing? Where are you working at? So let me see pictures of the kids, things like that. Versus at the 20-year reunion, we really already knew everything. We knew, almost every intimate detail of people's lives there, where they went on vacation, what their favorite food is, their kids. So this idea of knowing what people already know about you, what's out there, what's available, is very important. So and it helps to really then focus on what's most important to them, what's really key, what's critical to this conversation. So as I reflected on that, that's really ties into this idea of assumptions, where if I got to that event and was telling everybody about my job and my kids, like, I know that you post that stuff all the time.
Yeah. And you can't lie about it anymore, right? Because they already read, there's no, I can't show up and people aren't surprised that I'm bald. They see on Facebook, oh yeah, Marvin's got no hair. The class reunion takes all the mystery out.
Exactly. Oh, that's great. So Marvin, as you think about, you've made this transition from corporate America to full-time art career. We've talked a little bit about this idea of communication skills and how you leveraged, some of those transferable skills from your corporate career. But if you think about in the art world, what are some of the communication skills that are important to really having a successful career, right? Take, talent, obviously, you need to be a talented artist, but to really make a career out of it. Tell me a little bit about the communication skills that are most important today in the art world.
Yeah, something that I'm not as surprised about, but it took me a little bit to catch on to, is the idea of connectedness. And that, like in my case, if you read about me on my website or somewhere, you see that I'm a portrait artist slash cityscape artist. I like painting cities and bright lights and tall buildings, but I also like doing portraits. And so if I'm having an exhibition of cityscapes and I'm painting like say the town that I live in now, and I've painted depictions all around New London, Connecticut. Today, people are not just interested in the art or the content of the art, but if someone sees, geez, Marvin wants $7,000 for this painting, Marvin wants $4,000 for this painting of this city or this street that I live on, what's he doing for our community? What's he doing for this city? What's he doing for this neighborhood? And that's a big difference now. I think I can't paint. I can't just be now. I think artists do it, but I think it's a mistake to paint in today's climate and the way that we act. Most of us, the way that we make our work known and the way that we sell work, in part, is by having visibility on the internet, whether a website or Instagram or Facebook or something like that. So we're putting this work, this content out in the world, and people are looking, oh, Marvin paints cities. And I think more and more, I've got to be able to speak to my relationship between why I love to paint cities and why I care about cities and how that translates into my life. The same as if someone painted forest or woods or nature scenes. I think it's becoming more and more critical to say, yeah, I painted this scene and I'm doing it on biodegradable, I'm using biodegradable paints, or I'm using paints that don't contaminate the water, or I dispose of it, I dispose of my chemicals responsibly. So that kind of, and I mention it, Scott, because I think it's important that if I'm standing in the gallery at my opening exhibition and I'm talking, people are asking me about my work, and that's a real important thing, that a lot of artists tend to open an exhibition and then hide in the corner, or don't engage with the public that are coming to see you. But people want to talk to you, but in that engagement, it means a lot to people when you can say, not just what the work means to you or what it meant for you to do it, but how you are connected to that larger community. And it's not political. I don't think it's. I mean, it can be political, I guess, but I think today people are so much more socially conscious because of the amount of information and context that we get, that it's important to at least have an awareness of it, because if it hadn't come up yet, it's gonna come up more and more. Right. Questions about where you stand on these things.
No, it's a really interesting point around this idea of connectedness. So as you mentioned with cityscapes, if you're doing a lot of work in New London, or cityscapes of New London, or I know when you were in Charlotte, you did a lot of Charlotte, and were widely recognized for some of the paintings that you did of the cityscapes. They made number of accolades and on the cover of magazines in this area. But as I think about any of the types of products or services that a lot of people buy or interact with or use on a regular basis, I think that's becoming more and more important. That's this idea. Do you talk the talk and walk the walk?
Yeah.
Yes, it's great to paint cityscapes, but here's why, Charlotte or New London is important to me. Here's how I'm involved. Here's how I'm giving back. Or as you mentioned, the idea, if you're doing a lot of naturescapes, are you focusing on the environment in your life? And people are looking to businesses now where they're wanting to see that. And the parallel from my side is that working for a communication skills training organization, if I'm going in and pitching a presentation skills class and I'm a terrible presenter, that's not something that I'm passionate about, that I'm really focused on, or I'm really not engaged in helping others develop those skills or developing them myself, might be a red flag for people that are looking to do business with us. Or in your scenario, if you have two talented artists, they're both doing cityscapes, and they're both have great works of art that I enjoy, I'm more apt probably to work with or purchase from the person that has that story that's really connected to the work that they're doing. I think that can make a huge difference, not just for artists, but for anyone out there listening in your line of work. Is how are you really connected to your product or your service or what you're doing? And can you tell that story to your clients and prospects? I think that's a key part. And one of the things that you and I talked about last time we had connected was that first art show that you were entered into, and you won. And you alluded to it a little bit ago, but as I think about what we've talked about with your career and what has helped you to make this successful transition, it's this idea of just talking to people and not necessarily hiding behind the work, but really getting out there in front of it. Maybe if you could just talk a little bit about that experience at that first art show, I think maybe as an example of one of the skills that has really helped you in your career.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, and I would not have ever chosen to take a 27-year sales and marketing detour away from what I'm best at. And I found in the business world, Marvin had to run at his best time all the time just to keep up with the pack, because it wasn't what came most natural to me. I competed in athletics, but I was never a tiger. I was never a killer. And but when your job is on the line, or when you have a quota, or when you have accountability for that's numbers driven and performance driven, you have to learn that if I don't engage one more address, one more phone call, one more email, one more event, I might not hit the number I need to hit. It changes your perspective. And it took a while for me, but over the years that I spent, I developed a little bit more of a tiger mentality, and not in a consumption or not in a malicious way, but that I can't continue to do paintings if my paintings if they don't pay for the lights in my studio. I recently looked at my expenses, and since I moved to this area, I've had to add some different things, and I've got a different studio. I'm in a different market, and I gotta pay for Wi-Fi now. And I added up all. It's like, wow, just to hit my overhead, I've got to be running just to hit my overhead before I begin to make money. And and so I think something that I transferred from the business world into the art world is that I'm not ashamed to make money on my sale. I'm not ashamed to ask someone to make this purchase. Uh, um, I'm not ashamed to say to someone, I appreciate your offer, but this piece sells at X dollars per square inch. And at that rate, this is how much it cost. And I do a disservice to people who've invested in me in the past if I discount work for you. Now the work I sold my friend down the road isn't as valuable anymore because I'm discounting. And so I've learned that an artist who doesn't sell has a limited capacity to do work. Unless you're independently wealthy or you have someone who subsidizes your life in other ways, if I continue to make money on my work and my work continues to grow in value and I can continue to sell more and more of it, then I can do bigger projects. I can experiment with more. I can be more creative. I can give back more. I do art classes now, and I have enough people that sign up for my art classes that I can tap a couple shoulders and say, hey, you're really talented, and I know you couldn't, you told the last year you couldn't register, but I want to let you audit this class. Don't worry about the fee. Or I like being able to grab somebody from the neighborhood, or I'm almost to the point now where I can go to a community organization and say, hey, give me 5 kids and let me work with them. So, but you can't do that if you're afraid of making a sale, and you don't do that unless you engage. And what I've learned though is that people they don't want your sales pitch. They don't want they don't want a lot of fluff. But when someone comes to an art exhibition, you got a couple different kinds of people that come, right? You got people who know you and love you, and they just want to see you do well. They come out, they smile, they tell you nice things. They don't even buy art, or they get something from Target and they're good. And you got other people that really have a passion for art. They may or may not be in a position or interested in buying, but they love to come out and see, and they want to engage with you. And so what I do is I stand there, I make myself available, I make myself present, I let people observe for a little while, and then I tell them, hey, so tell me a little bit, what are you thinking when you see this work? What's it mean for you to see this piece? Is it saying something to you? And I'm reflecting in advance the questions that they ask me. Marvin, what were you thinking when you did this? Or what does this mean? And when you give it to them first, I think people tap into their own artist, and people want to feel smart, and people are smart. People want to feel like they have something to say, and they normally do. And it takes the assumptions off my plate when I ask them first, because you can't size people up by what they look like, or how they come to an event, or how they're dressed, or their race or age, or anything, because when you ask the question, you get these amazing replies. Well, and then people tell you what this art means, and sometimes they speak to my art better than I can. It's like, I wish I had said it that way. And so yeah, I think you have to engage, because I think people buy the story. People buy they buy what they feel from the experience they have with you. Yeah.
Definitely. And you bring up a really strong point there. And there's a lot of great similarities just from the business world and a leadership perspective. This idea of you just asking their input first, similar to as a leader, if I'm looking for an opinion on something, And as the leader of the team or the organization, and if I kick it off and say, well, here's what I think about it, A, B, C, D, and E. In a lot of environments, you're not going to get a whole lot of dissension from that. Everyone's, oh, okay, yep, the leader thinks this. We're going to go on and say, yep, that's great. We agree. Versus if you open it up and say, you know, what do you all think? I want to hear your feedback about it, and then I'll share my thoughts. You're going to get their honest interpretations from that. And I would think, you not for myself, not being an art connoisseur, knowing much about that world, if I were at a gallery or at an art show and the artist tells me about the painting and what it means and the interpretation of it, I'm not going to feel comfortable to disagree with the artist, the person that created it.
No.
So I think asking them, you're going to get a lot of valuable insights. You're going to build a connection, build a relationship with them, and then have your opportunity to tell the story. And as you mentioned, a lot of times people are buying, in addition to the tangible product, they're buying the story that goes along with it, and they're buying the person, you know, that created it, kind of part of them. So I think that's a great way to approach it. With one, don't be afraid to sell. I know there's oftentimes negative connotations with sales and being a salesperson. And there's a great book out there by Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human. It really means everybody every day is selling. You're selling something, whether you're just influencing a decision at your organization, you're selling the idea that, you know, I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. I'm selling them on wearing a coat. It's 20 degrees out. You need to wear a coat today. For some reason, coats are just taboo at school. I don't know why. Kids don't want to wear them.
You're not cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's not cool to wear a jacket anymore, but all day, every day, you're selling, you're influencing, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're coming from it, you're being honest and authentic, and you're providing that value. So this idea of you can't be afraid to get out there, whatever line of work you're in, and to quote, sell. And most importantly, allow people to share their perspectives, put it to them first, check those assumptions, and then be able to tell your story based on what you heard. That's outstanding. Now, Marvin, as you think about, you know, your career, you know, throughout the years, who has been somebody that has really influenced your communication style? And you don't necessarily need to name names, but you really, who's someone out there that you've taken something from and tried to incorporate it and make it your own?
Yeah, Scott, that was a hard one because I'm a real thief when it comes to that. I steal a little bit from everyone. But a name that kept coming to my mind was Malcolm Gladwell. And probably 20 something years ago, he wrote Tipping Point was the first of his books that I read.
I think.
And
do I have it? I know I have it. I have Outliers up on my shelf. I know I have Tipping Point somewhere.
Yeah. Did you tell? I don't remember. You might. I don't know if it was that long ago. I heard it somewhere else. But there's Tipping Point and Blink and David and Goliath, and he has such a unique perspective to. He definitely has either a story or a point that he's trying to take you to, but he approaches it from what seems like an obscure perspective, and then a really broad, kind of off the map kind of starting point. And before you know it, you've landed right in the lap where he wants you, and you're like, "Oh, how did we get?" Yeah,
right.
That's so cool, and I like that. And in my family growing up, storytellers were revered. At Thanksgiving, you're going eggnog's going to come out of your nose, or there's going to.
That's a great visual. Thanks.
And we hear, yeah, we hear, and a lot of times it was the same stories year after year, but man, you took pride in hearing those stories. And then as a kid on the school bus, the coolest kids were in the back of the bus telling stories, making people laugh. I'm dating myself, but Slick Rick and those guys, they when rap was young and new, it was this storytelling. Even the one of them titled "Tell Me a Story," and I love the storytellers that I've been around. But a flaw for me was when I first got into sales. I'm probably doing it now. I go too long. I tell these long stories and go way off topic. and I would lose people before I came back around. And if you take them too far, too slow, and too jumpy, then you don't have a chance to bring them back. And so I've had to learn as I can't help but telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
The way to make that work is to tell stories everywhere you go. If I buy coffee, you're going to get a 2-minute story from me. If you catch me in the elevator, and I know they talk about the elevator pitch or whatever, but you're going to get some kind of story, even if it's a brief thing about the weather or catch you on the flip side. You got to get some kind of story, because what happens is you get better and better and better. You get faster and faster, or you get to you get better at pacing the story to fit the environment, to fit the situation. I've talked my way out of some sales, both in my sales career and in my art career, because you run past the finish line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think I've always appreciated good storytellers. That was my short way of saying I like.
The stories are so important, and one of the key things that you mentioned is that you need to practice. Some people are just natural storytellers, and I understand that, but the reason that it seems natural today is that they've been telling stories all day, every day. Whenever, as you mentioned, whenever they meet somebody, there's a story. And for me, we get requests around that a lot for storytelling, and storytelling can mean a number of things to a number of people, but where the magic really happens is when you can take kind of two seemingly disconnected things, and at the end of your story, bring them together. Recently, I was talking about, I put out a video around, it was tied to a blog post we did around 4 elements or 4 ingredients for a presentation, and talking about my kids making cookies. And this idea, they're baking cookies, they're excited, I taste it, the cookie's just terrible. And, they forgot one of the ingredients. I think they forgot to put in the sugar into the cookies, which is a big deal. But bringing that back to, if you have these 4 elements of a presentation, you leave one of them out, it's going to have a huge impact on it. So that's one of the things with storytelling, is trying to figure out, how can I relate somewhat seemingly unrelated things and bring them together? That's when it's going to click for people. We can take, like Malcolm Gladwell does, this abstract, obscure concept and really bring it into reality. And I think with storytelling, especially in the art world, being important to build those relationships. One of the things that I really appreciate when I see your work is that the work itself tells a story. Every line on the paper, every stroke on the canvas, whether it's a wrinkle in someone's face from one of those drawings, or the blurred taillights of a car going down East Boulevard, you can really tell the story as to what's going on in that community, which is really powerful.
Well, Scott, it means a lot to me that you spoke so detailed in that, because I can envision what you were talking about. And you say you don't know art. My man.
Perfect.
That made me feel really good.
Well, good. I'm glad. I said, I'm such a big fan of your work. It's amazing. I'm just always blown away whenever I see something new come out from you. So Marvin, as we're wrapping up, just any closing thoughts or piece of advice for somebody that is, one, maybe an aspiring artist, or somebody that's in that career detour, right? They started off going one direction, they've had to pivot for whatever reason that may be. What advice do you have for any of those folks out there?
Well, and Scott, that's such a good question. And there's a lot of ways to answer that, but the thing that came to my mind is the idea of bloom where you're planted. And I did not, I resented at first the idea that this technology thing is putting a damper on this art career that I have. And I remember saying, this isn't going to last. Mm-hmm. This technology isn't, you're not going to be able to replace what I do. Technology, it's not going to last. It's going to come and go. Well, not the case. But when I decided to embrace where I was, and I couldn't see I didn't know of any other path outside of In those days, if there were some sales jobs, if you could fog a mirror with your breath, then that's all the qualifications you need to. We'll give you a go. But if you bloom where you're planted, you're going to acquire all the skills in that soil, right? Whatever richness is in the soil where you're planted, absorb it all, grab it, bring it up through your roots, bring it out your stalk, and then bloom. Because, and this is a metaphor now, but once you bloom, you can send your pollination out into the wind and let it land in the next spot. And for me, it's been a great journey. I wouldn't have planned it this way, but I don't think I could have achieved the small successes I've had so far. I'm expecting to do a lot more, but I don't think I could have achieved what I've done already if I had not had what seemed like a detour at the time, which was really the journey I was supposed to be on. But you gotta decide where I'm at today. Even if I'm making pizza, I need to be able to run the pizza shop, then get out of there. Mm-hmm. Because the same skills required to run a pizza shop are the same skills required to run a business. You got to make a good product. You got to make people feel good about buying it. You got to deliver on time. You got to have systems in place. You got to have reliability. You got to deliver, and you got to have a methodology. And so if you can take those skills and plug it into the next thing that's a little more sophisticated, and then the next thing, then there's nothing you're not going to be able to do. I mean, you're going to be able to do whatever you set your mind to. But you got to bloom where you're at.
Bloom where you're planted. I've never heard that before. I love that expression. And if
I didn't make that up. The pollination part might be me, but I didn't make up the bloom. Yeah.
That is great, because you think about when you made that quote detour, into, sales, business development, whatever you were doing, you could have just very easily just begrudgingly went to work every day, put your head down, fogged the mirror, so to speak. And that would have been it. You probably never would have made this transition, but because you really did focus on soaking up all the nutrients of the soil where you were at each stop along the way, you developed all these skills that you're able to now take into this successful art career that you have going on today. So Marvin, thank you so much again for joining me today. I really do appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Scott, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you.
A special thank you again to my guest, Marvin Espy, for sharing his expertise with us, and especially for this gem of bloom where you are planted. I absolutely love this. It is so important. If you're in a job that you may not like, you think is short term, whatever the situation may be, take advantage of all of the resources, the learning opportunities, and the experiences afforded to you. You will be able to use those skills and those learnings at some point in your career, whether it is 6 months from now, or in Marvin's case, where he took a 27-year career detour, he was able to leverage all of those learnings throughout that time to help get him to where he is with his successful art career. Thank you again for listening. Be sure to subscribe to Communicast to be notified of new episodes. And also, to learn more about Marvin's art, you can check him out on Instagram at Art by Espy. That's Art by Espy, E-S-P-Y. Thanks, and have a great day.